So here's a graph of g of x. It's a graph we don't know the equation of, but the idea is the same patterns happen whether we're given a random graph or a graph that we know. In fact, these ones that are random graphs are often easier because you don't have to do that first step of knowing what the original graph looks like. We're looking at y equals g of 0.5x. So this is inside the function. It's going to affect the x value. And this is where, if you're thinking in fractions, life is easier than if you're thinking in decimals, because 0.5 is the same as a half. And if we do the reciprocal of a half, we get 2. So we're going to multiply x by 2. So when I talked about multiplying before instead of dividing, this is why it's a little bit easier. Because thinking of dividing by a half isn't as easy to work with, because you'd have to, well, how do I divide by a fraction? I have to multiply by the reciprocal. You have to remember all those extra things. So just thinking to begin with that we're going to multiply by the reciprocal makes this easier. So if we look at the points on our original graph, and how many key points does our original graph have? It has 4 key points. There is, if we go from left to right, we have -3, 2. We have 1, 5, -1, 5, 3, 3, and 4, -2. We're going to look at each of those points and say, well, x is going to get multiplied by 2. So what does that do? We got -6, 2, -2, 5, 6, 3, and 8, -2. And now we can plot each of those points on our graph. And we can see that, sure enough, this first point, when we multiply the x by 2, we get -6, 2, -2, 5, 6, 3, and we can see that this has been stretched horizontally by a factor of 2. Notice that this one, your graph ends at a point. It doesn't end at the end of the graph to say that it goes on forever. So for our domain and range, our domain for the original one, and I'm going to use interval notation, the smallest value was -3. The largest value was 4, and those were included. So your smallest x value is -3, your largest x value was -4. For your y values, your smallest y value was -2, your largest y value was 5. And every y value was included in between. On our blue graph, because your x values were multiplied by 2, your range is not going to change. It still goes from -2 to 5, because nothing in the transformation affected the y value. But our x values got multiplied by -2, so notice that our domain, -3 multiplied by 2 gives us to -6. And 4 multiplied by 2, and now our biggest value is 8. All right, so questions 4 and 8, and I'll give you some time to work on 3, 4, and 8 right now.